Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS Study Circle. Dear Civil Services aspirants, we are very happy to inform you that the mains compass of essay paper is now available on eLearn platform. It is important here to understand that essay is very important part for your preparation for the mains examination. Now it is important because first, the weight of essay paper is around 12% in overall marking of the examination system. That is, it carries 250 marks out of 2025 marks. Second, in GS paper, even the toppers score from 95 to 100 marks, but in essay papers, toppers score around 140 plus easily. And third, essay uses your knowledge of general studies and hence it is easy to prepare for this paper. Now in the eLearn platform, you can go to the study material section. In the study material section, you can go to the compilations part. In the compilation part, type mains and then filter out. The moment you filter out, you'll find the Essay Compass Mains 2020. What you can do is to download the essay paper of Mains Compass 2020. Now the Mains Compass of essay paper is designed to give you a solid foundation about what UPSC expects from you. Now in the Mains Compass, there are certain sample essays which you can use in orienting yourself in the right direction. So you can access the PDF of this Mains Compass free of cost by logging into Rao's IAS eLearn platform. So all you have to do is to download the Mains Compass essay paper from eLearn platform. So from Rao's IAS Study Circle, all the very best with respect to your preparation for mains examination. And we hope you scored the maximum marks in your essay paper. Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading from a UPSC examination perspective. Now today we shall discuss the important news which has appeared in the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 17th October 2020. The news to be discussed has been displayed on your screen and timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So on this note, let's start our today's discussion from our examination point of view. Now the first news to be discussed appears on page number 1 as well as page number 2. Now the news appearing on page number 1 and also as a continuation on page number 8 says that Stubble Burning, Justice Lokur students to save NCR. The Supreme Court appoints one-man panel to monitor and prevent instances of stubble burning. So in this regard, this particular news highlights that the Supreme Court of India has appointed former Justice Madan B. Lokur as a one-man committee to look into the issues of stubble burning in the states of Punjab, Haryana as well as Uttar Pradesh. And in this regard, the Supreme Court has also stated that the Supreme Court's Environmental Pollution Prevention and Control Authority, that is EPCA, will consult the Lokur committee with respect to stubble burning. As every year around the months of October as well as November, because of the stubble burning, it pollutes the air of National Capital Region of Delhi as well as adjacent areas. So based on this, these two news appears on page number 2. This news highlights that air quality index improves in Delhi, neighbouring states. Whereas this particular news highlights the role of CPCB, that is Central Pollution Control Board, which says that CPCB expects dip in pollution levels in Delhi. Measures to reduce stubble burning, early harvesting key factors behind pattern. So as we see that these topics becomes important both from the perspective of prelims as well as mains examination. So in our analysis, let us understand about EPCA, Air Quality Index, SAFAR, as well as roles and functions of Central Pollution Control Board. Now the Madan Lokur committee constituted by the Supreme Court of India to look into the issue of stubble burning will be held by student volunteer forces, namely by National Cadet Corps, National Service Scheme and Bharat Scout and Guides. And in this regard, the chief secretaries of these three states will provide all the requisite facilities to the committee and will also provide adequate transportation facilities to these students who will patrol the highways and fields in three states and ensure that no fires are started in the fields. So in our discussion, let us understand the importance of these three news together. Now the news appearing on page number 2 highlights the fact that air quality of Delhi and around the region will improve slowly. Now the CPCB official, that is officials of Central Pollution Control Board, based on the data from SAFAR, have said that there will be improvement in air quality around Delhi, also because of increased wind speed. And it is in this regard that SAFAR has predicted improvement in air quality. So from our examination perspective, let us understand about air quality index, SAFAR, as well as National Ambient Air Quality Standards. And then we shall also try to understand certain basic functions of CPCB, that is Central Pollution Control Board. So for a better understanding, we had provided you this information in a tabulated manner. Now with respect to SAFAR, which stands for System of Air Quality and Weather Forecasting and Research, and it was introduced by Ministry of Earth Sciences, whereas Air Quality Index functions or is an initiative of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change and functions as one of the thrust area of CPCB. Now with respect to National Ambient Air Quality Standards, it is a sort of a standard for normal air, and this standard has been notified by Central Pollution Control Board. It says that CPCB has notified these standards under the powers given to it under Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act of 1981. Now the National Ambient Air Quality Standards provide for 12 pollutants, namely sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, PM10, that is particulate matter 10, particulate matter 2.5, ozone, lead, carbon monoxide, ammonia, benzene, benzopyrene, arsenic as well as nickel. Now here you must understand that what are the pollutants which are not included in air quality index as compared to NAAQS, that is National Ambient Air Quality Standards. Now with respect to air quality standard, it provides for 8 major pollutants, namely PM10 and PM2.5, both are there in National Ambient Air Quality Standards. Nitrogen dioxide, it is also present here. Sulfur dioxide, which is also present in National Ambient Air Quality Standards. Ozone is also present here. Carbon monoxide, which is also present here. Ammonia, which is also present here, along with lead. So we understand that all the pollutants measured by air quality index is also provided under the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. And the other pollutants provided under NAAQS includes benzene, benzopyrene, arsenic as well as nickel. So this information becomes important from your examination perspective. Another important aspect with respect to air quality index is that it's a color coded index graded with possible health impact. Now this is the meaning of color coded index. So if the air quality index of a particular city is from 0 to 50, then it is considered to be good and it is color coded in green. Similarly, air quality index from 51 to 100 is considered as satisfactory, color coded as light green. Air quality index from 101 to 200 is considered as moderate, color coded in yellow. So for air quality index from 0 to 50, it's good and has minimal impact. For air quality index 51 to 100 is considered satisfactory, and here it says that minor breathing discomfort to sensitive people. And with respect to moderate air quality index, it highlights about breathing discomfort to the people with lungs, asthma and heart disease. Now after the air quality index of 200, it deteriorates further. From 201 to 300, it's considered as poor, and it says breathing discomfort to most people on prolonged exposure. And here it is marked in orange color. Further, from 301 to 400, air quality index is considered as very poor, marked as red, and it highlights that it can lead to respiratory illness on prolonged exposure. Whereas from 401 to 500 is categorized as severe, color coded as maroon, and it affects healthy people and seriously impacts those with existing diseases. So these are the color code as well as possible health impacts with respect to air quality index. Now if you have gone through the news, it highlights that the air quality index of Delhi and surrounding region have bettered from very poor to poor. So from respiratory illness on prolonged exposure, the air quality index has bettered to breathing discomfort to most people on prolonged exposure. So these are some of the important aspects with respect to air quality index. As we have already seen that the air quality index provides for 6 AQI categories, namely good, satisfactory, moderately polluted, poor, very poor and severe. Now coming to SAFAR, that is System of Air Quality and Weather Forecasting and Research. Now it was introduced by Ministry of Earth Sciences and was developed indigenously by Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology in Pune, and it is operationalized by the Indian Meteorological Department. Now, SAFAR provides location-specific information on air quality in near real time, and it also gives a forecast of 1 to 3 days in advance. And it is because of this aspect SAFAR has predicted improvement in air quality surrounding Delhi and its region. So the prediction based on SAFAR combines with early warning system on weather parameters as well. Now, the observational network with respect to SAFAR of air quality monitoring stations and automatic weather stations has been established within city limits and also represents selected microenvironments. Now, these selected microenvironments of the city includes industrial area, residential area, urban complexes, agricultural zones, etc. So SAFAR monitors the air quality of an industrial area, airport site, urban complex, coastal areas, agricultural area, core city area, background site as well as residential areas. Now, as of now, there are only 4 cities in which SAFAR is providing quality forecast. These 4 cities are Delhi, Pune, Mumbai as well as Ahmedabad. So as you can see, for healthy people, it says be alert and watchful for unusual fatigue. Heart patients see doctor if get palpitations, shortness of breath or unusual fatigue. With respect to Pune, it says enjoy the day since the air quality index is good. Now with respect to Mumbai also, it also says enjoy the day since the air quality index is green in color. And similarly for Ahmedabad as well. And as compared to these 4 cities, only Delhi has bad air quality and thereby it has given certain advisory for sensitive groups. It says reduce prolonged or heavy exertion, take more breaks and do less intense activities. Asthmatics keep medicine ready if symptoms of coughing or shortness of breath occur, and heart patients see doctor if get palpitation, shortness of breath or unusual fatigue. Now moving further with respect to pollutants monitored under SAFAR includes PM1, PM2.5, PM10, ozone, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, that is both nitrogen monoxide and nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, black carbon, methane, non-methane hydrocarbons, VOCs, that is volatile organic compounds, benzene as well as mercury. Now on the website of PIB, it also highlights that SAFAR will also monitor the existence of benzene, toluene and xylene. Further, apart from measuring the pollutants, SAFAR also monitors meteorological parameters with respect to ultraviolet radiation, rainfall, temperature, humidity, wind speed, wind direction as well as solar radiation. So these are some of the important aspects with respect to SAFAR, that is System of Air Quality and Weather Forecasting and Research, National Ambient Air Quality Standards, which provide for air quality standards for these 12 pollutants, and also Air Quality Index. Now moving to Central Pollution Control Board. Now the Central Pollution Control Board was established in 1974 under the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974 as a technical arm of the central government for environmental research, monitoring, regulation, as well as enforcement in India. Further, the Central Pollution Control Board was also entrusted with powers and functions under the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. So, the Central Pollution Control Board has powers under both Water Prevention and Control Pollution Act as well as Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. Further, the CPCB also provides technical services to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change under the provisions of Environment Protection Act of 1986. Now, if we see the website of Central Pollution Control Board, as you can see, it mentions about various standards. So, the Central Pollution Control Board provides for air quality standards, water quality standards, vehicular exhaust standards, noise standards, biomedical incinerator standards, auto fuel quality standards, common hazardous waste incinerator standards, generator state standards, as well as industry specific standards, both with respect to effluent and emission from industries. And with respect to trust areas, it mentions about National Air Quality Index, rejuvenation of Ganga, online monitoring of industrial emission and effluent, and Air Quality Index Bulletin. So important point to be remembered from our examination perspective is that CPCB is empowered under the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act as well as Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981 and functions under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. All these 3 news becomes very important to understand from our examination perspectives, especially with respect to environment and climate change. Now, based on our discussion, let us take up this question asked by UPSC in the prelims of 2018. The question was, how is the National Green Tribunal different from Central Pollution Control Board? Statement 1. The NGT has been established by an act, whereas CPCB has been created by an executive order of the government. No, this statement is incorrect, as CPCB has been established under Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974. So the first statement becomes incorrect. Second, the NGT provides environmental justice and helps reduce the burden of litigation in higher courts, whereas CPCB promotes cleanliness of streams and wells and aims to improve the quality of air in the country. Now, the second statement is correct, as the Central Pollution Control Board aims to promote cleanliness of streams and wells in different areas of the states by prevention, control, and abatement of water pollution, as well as to improve the quality of air and to prevent, control, or abate air pollution. So, we understand that the Central Pollution Control Board controls both water pollution as well as air pollution. Hence, the second statement about CPCB becomes correct. So the question was, which of the statements given above are correct? So here the correct answer becomes B, that is 2 only. So we understand that the functions of CPCB is very important with respect to our examination perspective. So these 3 news becomes important from the perspective of prelims as well as mains examination. In your prelims, it gets covered under general issues on environmental ecology, biodiversity and climate change. And in the mains, it gets covered under GS paper 3, especially with respect to conservation, environmental pollution and degradation, as well as environmental impact assessment. So these 3 news with respect to SAFAR, National Ambient Air Quality Standards, as well as Air Quality Index becomes very important, including the role and function of Central Pollution Control Board. With this, let's move on to our next news discussion. The next news to be discussed appears on page number 4. It says, new group to revive Bodoland movement, as the new peace accord is unacceptable, and this new group is All India Bodo People's National League for Bodoland Statehood. Now this group wants to revive the demand of Bodoland statehood just prior to the Bodoland Territorial Council elections, as this group is not happy with the Bodoland peace accord signed between Government of India, Government of Assam, as well as various stakeholders of Bodo movement. Now, from your prelims perspective, you should know about the 3 Bodo Peace Accord which has been signed in 1993, 2003 and presently in 2020. The first Bodo Peace Accord was signed in February 1993, and this led to the creation of Bodoland Autonomous Council. However, the first peace accord was rejected by National Democratic Front of Bodoland. So, the Government of India had to sign the second peace accord in February 2003. Now, the second peace accord was signed to pacify the Bodoland Liberation Tigers, and the signing of second Bodo peace accord elevated the Bodoland Autonomous Council to Bodoland Territorial Council, and based on this, amendments were introduced in the 6th schedule of the Indian Constitution. And this aspect of amendment in the 6th schedule have already been discussed on DNS dated 8th October 2020, when the news appeared with respect to Bodoland poll gets Assam cabinet nod. Now, in this analysis of 8th October 2020, we discussed in detail about Bodoland Territorial Council as well as the changes made in the 6th schedule with respect to the 2003 constitutional amendment. So, to understand about the Bodoland Territorial Council as well as the elections which take place under the 6th schedule of the Indian Constitution, go through this DNS dated 8th October 2020. And after the second peace accord, very recently, the third peace accord was signed on 30th January 2020 between the Government of India, the Government of Assam, as well as different stakeholders of Bodo movement. And this was done mainly to usher peace in Bodoland Territorial Area District, that is BTAD. So this is the gist with respect to this particular news appearing on page number 4 with respect to the Northeast section. So in this analysis, let us understand about the history of demand for separate state for Bodoland. So as per this map, this is the area of Bodoland which they are demanding as a separate state. So with respect to Bodos, the Bodos are an ethno-linguistic group believed to be the earliest inhabitants of Assam, are one of the Indo-Mongoloid communities belonging to Tibeto-Burman branch of the Sino-Tibetan family. Now, for centuries, Bodos have maintained their original ethnic identity. However, by 20th century, they had to tackle a series of issues such as illegal immigration, encroachment of their lands, forced assimilation, loss of language, as well as culture. So, all these reasons led to the demand for Bodoland as a separate state. It further highlights that the 20th century also witnessed the emergence of Bodos as a leading tribe in Assam, which pioneered the movements for safeguarding the rights of the tribal communities in the area. So, in this backdrop, let us understand the overall development for a separate state as Bodoland. So, the entire journey starts in 1920. Here, a group of educated Bodos, referred as Bodo Plains tribals, met Simon Commission who came to India. And then this educated group of Bodos requested reservation of seats in Legislative Assembly of Assam. So overall we can say that this event marked the first political awareness among Bodos as they demanded reservation of seats in the Legislative Assembly of Assam after meeting Simon Commission. Now all these developments took place in the 1920s. Now after 1920s came the 1930s where these Bodos formed Tribal League of Assam, and this league provided a voice for the political rights of the Plains tribes of Assam. So slowly we see an emergence of political awareness as well as political consciousness among Bodos. Now after independence, that is after 1947, Bodo Sahitya Sabha was formed or constituted, and this was done to preserve and develop the Bodo language. Now from 1950 to 1960 and even in 1970s, the Bodos were affected by constant immigration from East Pakistan earlier, and after independence of Bangladesh, there was still influx of people from Bangladesh. So all these influx started changing demography of the region, and this overall created certain mistrust and discontent among the Bodos living in the Plains tribes. So based on all these developments, the Plains Tribal Council of Assam started campaigning for a separate union territory called Udyanchal. So for the first time, they demanded for a separate union territory referred as Udyanchal. And this union territory was demanded for Bodos and other Plains tribes of Assam in the 1960s. So for the first time, we see that in the 1960s, a union territory was demanded by the Bodos. Now, independence of Bangladesh in 1971 and even later, that is during the 1970s, it led to more immigration or influx of people in Assam. And this overall alienated Bodos in their own homeland. And this situation overall further intensified the statehood movement of Bodos. So the demand of Bodos shifted from demanding union territory to that of complete statehood. And in this regard, the role of All Bodo Student Union was significant, as All Bodo Students Union played a major role in starting agitation for separate state. Now this demand for separate statehood also took a violent turn, and in the year 1986, Bodo Security Force was created by certain educated youths. Now this Bodo Security Force was later renamed as National Democratic Front of Bodoland. So the genesis of National Democratic Front of Bodoland can be traced to 1986 when Bodo Security Force was formed. Now the demand for National Democratic Front of Bodoland shifted from statehood to demanding sovereign Bodo homeland north of river Brahmaputra, and this started creating problems with the government of India. And because of this, the government of India placed National Democratic Front of Bodoland under Schedule 1 of UAPA. That is, it was categorized as a terrorist organization under Unlawful Activities Prevention Act of 1967. And recently, the Ministry of Home Affairs has banned the National Democratic Front of Bodoland. So this topic becomes important, especially with respect to demand for Bodoland statehood. And with respect to your prelims, it gets covered under Indian Polity and Governance, especially with respect to Bodoland Territorial Council under 6th schedule. And in your mains, it gets covered under GS paper 3, especially with respect to linkages between development and spread of extremism, role of external state and non-state actors in creating challenges to internal security, as well as security challenges and their management in border areas, as well as linkages of organized crime with terrorism, along with GS paper 2 with respect to Bodoland Territorial Council under 6th schedule of the Indian Constitution. Now, with respect to languages, Bodo language is one of the 8 scheduled language of the Indian Constitution. So this aspect also becomes important from our examination perspective. Thus, this news becomes important both from the perspective of polity and governance and also from the perspective of security. With this, let's move on to our next news discussion. The next news to be discussed appears as an editorial on page number 6. It says, Valley's voice. The center must respect the voices of reason and moderation in Kashmir. Now, with respect to this particular editorial, you must know about People's Alliance for Gupkar Declaration. Now, the signatories to the Gupkar Declaration has vowed to defend identity, autonomy, as well as special status of Jammu and Kashmir. And various political parties of Jammu and Kashmir have now reiterated their earlier pledge to seek restoration of special status for Jammu and Kashmir. That is, through this declaration, this committee wants to restore statehood for Jammu and Kashmir. Now, the point to be understood here is that it is not an electoral alliance. That is, Gupkar Declaration is not an electoral alliance. So, these different political parties of Jammu and Kashmir are not coming together as a political entity to fight elections. Rather, these leaders have decided to take the debate with respect to restoration of special status for Jammu and Kashmir back to the people of not only Jammu and Kashmir but also Leh and Kargil, since the state was bifurcated into the union territories of Jammu and Kashmir as well as Ladakh. And also, the group aims to initiate discussions with respect to restoration of special status for Jammu and Kashmir with different sections of the society. So, with respect to this particular editorial, you must know about the People's Alliance for Gupkar Declaration, as it is an alliance to seek restoration for special status of Jammu and Kashmir to defend their identity, autonomy, and special status. Now, this topic becomes important primarily from the perspective of prelims examination, as questions can be asked in our prelims. So, this topic becomes important with respect to current events of national importance, and also with respect to Indian polity and governance, especially with respect to restoration of special status for Jammu and Kashmir, which was guaranteed through the erstwhile Article 370 of the Indian Constitution. So, in this discussion, you should know about the People's Alliance for Gupkar Declaration. With this, let's move on to our next news discussion. The next news to be discussed also appears as an editorial on page number 6. It says, Hope amid uncertainty. IMF calls for more international cooperation as the world economy recovers slowly. Now, the World Economic Outlook in its 2020 report has stated that emerging Asia is projected to be the only region with a positive growth rate in 2020. And this report has been titled as the Great Lockdown. Now, this editorial highlights about two aspects with respect to this 2020 report of IMF with respect to World Economic Outlook. First aspect is with respect to hope of recovery in times to come. And the second aspect is with respect to certain uncertainties which still lingers, especially with respect to prediction of second wave of COVID-19, as France has imposed a night curfew. So, and in this regard, there is definitely certain uncertainty, especially with respect to the second wave of COVID-19. Now, with respect to economies of most parts of the world, including India, we have seen two aspects during the COVID lockdown. When there was extreme lockdown, we saw contraction in economy. And then when slowly activities were slowly eased, then we also saw certain economic recoveries. So in this regard, even world economy has seen contraction in the first half of COVID years, and then we also saw certain recoveries in later part of COVID epidemic. So in this regard, this report says that even in China, indicators such as industrial production, retail sales, and fixed asset investment suggest that contraction in economic activity in the first quarter could have been about 8% year over year. That is, contraction of 8% as compared to last year. And even with a sharp rebound in the remainder of the year and sizable fiscal support, the economy is projected to grow at a subdued 1.2% in 2020. It further highlights that several economies in the region are forecast to grow at moderate rates, including India at 1.9%, Indonesia at 0.5%, and others are forecast to experience large contractions. especially with respect to Thailand, which is expected to see a contraction of 6.7% in its economic output. So these are some of the aspects with respect to contraction of economy as well as hope of recovery in the later part when COVID restrictions were eased. So in this regard, this news also highlights that while the global economy is projected to shrink 4.4% this year, reflecting a less severe contraction than 5.2% drop estimated in June. Output, however, is seen rebounding at a marginally slower 5.2% pace in 2021. So overall, there is hope with respect to rebounding of economy, although at a slower pace in 2021. The next point highlighted here is that better than anticipated second quarter GDP outturns mostly in advanced economies where activity improved after lockdowns were eased, as well as signs of a stronger recovery in the July-September quarter. That is this part we are talking about, that during the July-September quarter we saw recovery not only in advanced economies but also in other economies. However, the World Economic Report highlights that despite these hope, still the effect of partial lockdowns, especially in France, has casted a shadow on resurgence of economic activity. And this is also because of a prediction of second COVID wave. And this has also created further uncertainty. And this further uncertainty is based on two aspects. First is with respect to public health response with respect to different nations as to how different nations will cope in case there is a second wave of COVID-19. And second, the extent of disruption of domestic activities which the second wave of COVID-19 will have an impact. So these are some of the uncertainties highlighted in the IMF report. So because of COVID and its uncertainties, investment is not taking place. It has resulted in lost schooling for students, which overall also impairs human capital. Any efforts to improve average living standards either by individuals or economy or by the country is definitely to receive setbacks. Pandemic will widen inequality not only among nations but also with respect to individuals. So considering all these setbacks, the IMF in its report highlights the need for healthy workforce and in this direction has urged all countries of the world to work together so that they can find a COVID vaccine or any solution for COVID as soon as possible. As faster availability of medical solution could boost global income by roughly around $9 trillion by the end of 2025. As any COVID vaccine or any cure for COVID will further lead to improved or a healthy workforce. So in this time of economic despair caused due to COVID, IMF has asked the countries as well as the policy makers to go for direct income support, especially for the most vulnerable sections of the society. As the most vulnerable sections of the society are the ones who are currently facing the brunt of COVID-19 pandemic. So this editorial through the World Economic Outlook report of 2020 reflects not only a hope of recovery with respect to COVID-19 but also certain uncertainties which still lie ahead. Now from your prelims perspective, you must know that the World Economic Outlook is published by International Monetary Fund, and from your prelims perspective it gets covered under issues relating to Indian economy, and in your mains gets covered under GS paper 3. With this, let's move on to our next news discussion. The next news to be discussed appears on page number 9. It says, India fares poorly in hunger index. The country has highest prevalence of wasted children. Even Bangladesh and Pakistan score better. Now the hunger index is calculated based on inadequate food supply to children, child undernutrition, which includes both wasting and stunting, and also child mortality. Now, undernourishment basically refers to share of the population which is undernourished, that is, whose calorie intake is insufficient. Now, this insufficient calorie intake leads to child wasting as well as child stunting. Now, child wasting is the share of children under the age of 5 years who are wasted, that is, who have low weight for their height, and this reflects acute undernutrition. So as you can see in this picture, this is the picture of a normal child and this is the picture of a wasted child who is thinner than normal. Now, with respect to child stunting, it says the share of children under the age of 5 years who are stunted, which means who have low height for their age, which also reflects chronic undernutrition. And child mortality refers to the mortality rate of children under the age of 5 years. That is, number of death of children under the age of 5 years taking place per 1000 live birth. So these are the three important elements of global hunger index, that is inadequate food supply, child undernutrition which includes both wasting as well as stunting, and also child mortality, that is number of death of child under 5 years of age per 1000 live birth. So the rank of so India has been ranked at 94 with respect to global hunger index for the year 2020, and India's rank of 94 is out of 107 countries. So, in this regard, this news says that India has the highest prevalence of wasted and stunted children. However, in this regard, this news says that with respect to stunting, the data has actually increased. That is, in the year 2000, there were roughly around 54% of the children were stunted, whereas now less than 35% of children are stunted. However, this cannot be said about wasting, as wasting in India has not improved as compared to the year 2000. So, as per the Global Hunger Index 2020 report for India, it reflects acute undernourishment in India. Now, with respect to India's rank, it is ranked lower as compared to its neighbors, as Bangladesh has been ranked at 75, Pakistan at 88, and Nepal has been ranked at 73. Here, the report says that out of 107 countries, only 13 countries fare worse than India, including countries like Rwanda, Nigeria, Afghanistan, Liberia, Mozambique, Chad, among others. The report further says that India has improved in both child mortality rates, which is now at 3.7%, and in terms of undernourishment, with about 14% of the total population, which gets an insufficient caloric intake. However, the concerning point is that child wasting has not improved in the last 2 decades and is rather worse than it was a decade ago. Further, India's score of 2020 in Global Hunger Index reflects data from 2015 to 2019. And overall, we can say that stunting in India has improved, however, wasting has not improved. Now, if we see the global map with respect to Global Hunger Index, then India, with a score of 27.2, has been categorized under the serious situation, whereas only few countries other than India has been categorized at an alarming situation having a score of 35 or more, whereas a score of 10 to 19.9 has been categorized as moderate, and a score of less than 9.9 has been categorized as low scores. So this is an interactive world map with respect to 2020 Global Hunger Index. Now, another important aspect to be remembered is that the Global Hunger Index is a peer-reviewed annual report, and it is jointly published by Concerned Worldwide and Welt Hunger Life, and it is designed to comprehensively measure and track hunger at global, regional, and country levels. So this topic becomes important both from the perspective of prelims as well as mains examination. In your mains, it gets covered under GS paper 2, especially with respect to issues relating to poverty and hunger, and in the prelims, it gets covered under social development, poverty, as well as inclusion. The next news to be discussed appears on page number 14. The news says policy delay hurting edible oil security. Now, this particular news highlights that the delay in rollout of National Oilseed Mission was hurting India's edible oil security. As this news says that this delay in the announcement is a cause of concern as the raw material supply is reducing and the dependence on import of edible oil is rising year after year. So this aspect of import of edible oil rising year after year has become one of the major concerns with respect to edible oil. Now the oilseed crops are considered to be the second most important agricultural crops next only to the cereals. And the self-sufficiency in oilseeds attained through the Yellow Revolution during the early 90s could not be sustained beyond a short period. So, India, despite being fifth largest oilseed crop producing country in the world, is also one of the largest importers of vegetable oil. And this represents the demand-supply mismatch. That is, despite the fact that India is the fifth largest oilseed crop producing country in the world, India is also one of the largest importers of vegetable oils. as India imports almost 60% of its vegetable oil requirements, which accounts for around $11 billion. So, the demand supply gap in the edible oil has necessitated huge imports accounting for 60% of the country's requirement. And against this backdrop, the Union Finance Minister had stated in the Union Budget that there is a need to boost the production of oil seeds in India. Now, with respect to this aspect, let us go through this particular question asked by UPSC in the prelims of 2018. The question was, consider the following statements. The quantity of imported edible oils is more than the domestic production of edible oils in the last 5 years. And the second statement was, the government does not impose any customs duty on all the imported edible oils as special case. So in this regard, this topic becomes very important with respect to edible oil seeds. So with respect to oil seed production, in 2017-18, the oil seeds were cultivated over an area of 26 million hectares, and this led to the production of around 30 million tons of edible oil. And out of this, 70% of the oil seeds were cultivated in rain-fed areas. With respect to oil seeds production, the vegetable oil production is around 7 million tons from about 30 million tons of oil seeds. And due to this demand-supply mismatch, India has emerged as the largest importer of vegetable oils in the world, followed by China and United States. And of the imported edible oils, share of palm oil is about 60%, followed by soybean oil and sunflower. So considering the high import of edible oil, the government has provided certain initiative to boost production of oil seeds within the country. First is with respect to the National Food Security Mission of Oil Seeds and Oil Palm. It says that the whole purpose is to augment the availability of vegetable oils and to reduce the import of edible oils by increasing the production and productivity of oil seeds from an average production of 30 million tons and productivity of 1122 kg per hectare during the 12th plan period to 36 million tons and 1290 kg per hectare. So both aspects are targeted here, that is production as well as productivity. Further, it highlights that under this scheme, financial assistance is provided to farmers through the state government for various interventions like production and distribution of quality seeds of new varieties, demonstration of improved technologies, distribution of biopesticides, weedicides, micronutrients, gypsum, lime, biofertilizer, farm machinery as well as implements. Another important aspect highlighted here is with respect to increase in the import duties on vegetable oils. So the government has increased the custom duty on imported crude and refined vegetables so as to incentivize the farmers to increase the production of oil seeds. And third, increase in minimum support price. So the government has been increasing the MSP of the oil seeds to encourage farmers to grow more oil seeds. So based on our discussion, we understand that the first statement is correct. However, the second statement becomes incorrect as it says that the government does not impose any customs duty on all the imported edible oil as a special case. However, we have just seen that the government has increased the customs duty on the imported crude and refined vegetables so as to incentivize the farmers to increase production of oil seeds. Hence in this, the question was which of the statements given above are correct. So the correct answer here was A, that is one only. So this topic becomes important with respect to Indian economy, specifically with respect to Indian agriculture, and in the mains gets covered under GS paper 3. Now after our discussion, this forms your question for the day. The question is, People's Alliance for Gupkar Declaration can be associated with. Options are A, climate change, B, 6th schedule, C, restoring statehood for Jammu and Kashmir, and D, online school education for children. Now coming to the answer of yesterday, the answer was B, that is 1 and 2 only. That is the first two statement with respect to hunger index is correct. With this, we come to an end to today's discussion. Thank you.